Especially in these times of economic uncertainty, are there investors who still prioritize or care about social impact?
When you see that you are part of the community, then impact becomes the most important thing. It's only when I am disconnected with the community that I say, well, what is my return? Right? And so getting to that place, I think, is really where we're trying to get to. Broaden the sense of who sees the community as part of their lives.
The greatest migration is underway, and it is changing every facet of our lives and our economy. And we get to be a part of it. My name is Alfa. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital, and we've been transforming lives and communities through entrepreneurship for the past 20 years. Today is a special edition of Future Tide Conversations. If you're new here, this podcast began with a question: can the future tide raise all boats? And what a better place to go looking for those answers than to find the investors and the entrepreneurs who are on the front lines of that change. Today's special episode features a community investor, a banker, a partner, and a philanthropist who's been supporting the mission of Rising Tide Capital for many decades. So I want to tune in and ask him a few questions, particularly as an investor, for his perspective on what the values and practices and principles are that drive the kind of investing that will deliver on the promise of the greatest migration.
Today's special guest is Preston D. Pinkett III. He's the president of P3 Collective and chair of the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. With a career spanning impact investing, community banking, and public-private partnerships, Preston brings powerful insights how staying proximate to community can transform how we invest, lead, and build.
We start the conversation with Preston, with where our journey began many years ago.
I've watched Rising Tide grow over the last 20 years. I mean, when I first came, it was just an acorn of an idea, and the work that the team has put in, so exceptional. And so a chance to come in, join the board, and move the organization to the next level is, it's sort of the culmination of everything that I've been watching you guys do over the last 20 years. So I couldn't be more excited to be here. I couldn't be more excited to be part of the next phase of the growth of Rising Tide Capital.
We were curious about what drives social impact investors like Preston to do this kind of work.
This has really been my life's work, right? So I've only done this kind of work, whether it was to build, to finance affordable housing, or to build housing, or to create businesses and develop communities, to provide financial services for low-income individuals and families. I mean, so I would say this has been my passion.
Yet it can't be easy navigating the tensions between financial return and social impact, especially in these times of economic uncertainty. Are there investors who still prioritize or care about social impact?
I think that we are at a place now where, in general, there are investors who see the value of impact. And so we have a commitment from a group of investors that want to have an impact other than just financial returns. It's a conversation that's going back and forth in many places, and there are a lot of terms being thrown around. But at the end of the day, there are investors who realize that the money invested should do more than just get a return to the investors, that it's got to make a difference in communities, it's got to make a difference in people's lives. And with that, I think there's a big opening for organizations like Rising Tide Capital to actually make the difference that needs to be made in communities, and advance an idea that can be replicated around the country.
Knowing impact continues to drive investors in their decision-making around allocation of capital is really hopeful. Let's hear Preston share how that reality plays out in community.
I live in a small town, and we had a restaurant. It was important. Just a place, I mean, nothing special, but it was a place where everybody gathered. It closed for a while. 5 or 6 people in town said, we need to have a place to go get a beer and a burger, and they invested in the restaurant to open it up. Now, they didn't know when they were doing it that it was an impact investment, but it was in the sense of building community. So what I say all the time is if the people who have the money care about it, it's an impact investment. It's when you don't have the money in the community and you have to go outside the community to bring the money in to make the investment that financial returns become paramount. And so getting people to see their role in community not as something I'm delivering to them, but as something we're doing together as a us is really the difference between an impact and a financial investment. And so I think that governments and foundations and some well-meaning institutions have realized that that their role as being part of a community requires that they do the kinds of things that create community, not simply extract from the community funds to provide for their investors or their shareholders, but really to be part of the community and put money in a way that creates community. And so I think that's the difference, right? I may not be saying this as clearly as I would like, but it's when you see the community, when you see that you are part of the community, then impact becomes the most important thing. It's only when I am disconnected with the community that I say, well, what is my return? Right? And so getting to that place, I think, is really where we're trying to get to. Broaden the sense of who sees the community as part of their lives, and therefore causing them to be willing to make the investment.
When we're close to something, when it touches our lives, return stops being the first question. It's really about what matters. And so I'm curious, when we're thinking about how we allocate capital to places and people and communities that are far away from those who hold investment capital, from those who have wealth, how do we go about bridging that gap?
Does proximity matter? Yes. But it's also perspective. So, and I think what we're trying to build is a bigger sense of community. So if I only care about the things that happen in my house or my block, or how do I get to a sense where the things that matter to me are the things that affect other people and I see them in me, right? That's what we're trying to get to. So unfortunately, capitalism as discovered in America has none of that built in as a way to measure or to capture even. So the best investments are the ones that get the biggest return, and the biggest return seems to be in interest rates, in return on investment numbers. What you're doing here is saying the return is in the change it makes in people's lives, the change it makes in the communities that people live in. And so getting people to understand that, right, it's a hell of a responsibility. It's a difficult challenge, but it is incumbent upon Rising Tide Capital, you, and organizations like yours to bring people to that thinking, because it is not something that they are given to ordinarily, naturally, easily. There is an idea that there is a us and a them, and breaking that down so that people can see that their humanity in other people's struggle is really a challenge. And it is, but that is really essential to unlock this opportunity.
We've talked about capital and those who direct it, but what about entrepreneurs and their role in impact creation? What advice does Preston have for them?
Yeah, so there are two things that local entrepreneurs really have to do, I think. One is to show that the business enterprise is a valid, valuable enterprise, right? That's sort of the baseline for business. If you're going to be in business, you need to be in a business that is that is successful by general terms and conditions, and we don't need to go down that road. But the other thing I think is really important is to the passion. So the entrepreneurs that come through Rising Tide Capital, I view in some sense like artists, right? They are expressing themselves through their work, and what Rising Tide Capital is able to do is give them the tools to make that a successful business. And so that passion, that's what captures the investor. It's not the financial results. It's the passion that the entrepreneur brings to it. Now, the passion and skill will lead to financial results. We believe that's the theory, and so that's how this works. But I think it's really what people invest in is the entrepreneur, is the passion, is that it's that the thing that is burning inside of them that is unlocked with the business that really makes the difference.
How can entrepreneurs capture the interests of investors, especially nowadays where there are so many tools? So writing a fancy plan is not necessarily the issue. So what might entrepreneurs be overlooking? What advice does Preston have for them?
Being able to listen is probably the biggest skill. And people talk about your 5-minute elevator pitch, but it's also the 3-minute response. And so you give the pitch, but then the person you're giving the pitch to is going to say something. Being able to hear that and to incorporate that into your thinking is really critical. It may very well be that the business, the market, or the business model, or something could turn a half inch in one direction, right? 3 degrees in one direction, and it would make all the difference in the world. So one thing about being an entrepreneur is knowing that you might not have it all right, but you in a general direction, you know where you want to go, and then be willing to swap out one thing for another, or one way for another way, and you only get that from listening to people who have experience. Now, everything that people say is not going to work, right? You can't do everything. So you've got to be able to separate the good ideas from the bad ideas. But the willingness to listen is a sign of an entrepreneur that could succeed. Everybody doesn't start with the best idea first, but the willingness to recraft it and rethink it and talk it through and test it, that's the sign of an entrepreneur that's going to be successful.
Let's talk about ethics in entrepreneurship and in social impact investing. How do values play a role in decision-making that prioritizes impact first?
It becomes an ethical question. Depends on the values that the organization has, right? You will know the values when you come to those kinds of decisions. But I think there are often times when businesses can say, I can go this way and have more financial return, but an adverse impact in some other way, or I can go this way. I think that it becomes a question of the ethics and the values of the people in the room. And unfortunately, there's no way to capture that, right? Again, we're back to what we're trying to capture is elusive. It's difficult to see. The financial return is a big number, and it's bright and it's shiny, and it's and it's easy for people to capture and hold on to, and a way to say I won, no matter who I hurt, no matter what destruction I put out into the world. And so I think the work of finding and creating ethical entrepreneurs is really important. And I think that that if you're just creating entrepreneurs who seek to take advantage of their clients and take advantage of the environment and their investors, then I would say that's a failed business model. One that says I want to contribute to the community. I want to contribute to my employees. I want to make sure that there's a fair return to my investors, and I want to make enough money so that I can live a life that is sound and make sure my kids are. That's a That's an ethical entrepreneur, and that's really what we're trying to create.
When investors look at the state of things, what keeps them awake at night? I asked Preston to reflect on the ethical failures and systemic issues we currently face and what we can do to confront them.
We don't have that much time.
Top three.
Ethical priorities or failures.
Yeah.
Listen, I think that areas around education, areas around environmental degradation and health in communities, access to housing, access to safe, decent, affordable places to live. I think we have neglected so much, and in so doing destroyed the spirit of so many people, that if I were to think about this at night, I would not only be kept up, I would never sleep. So for me, building community is such a big issue, and the disconnect that we've created with the rich and the poor is only getting bigger and causing people to react in ways that are untenable, and not only on both sides, the rich and the poor. I mean, if in San Francisco they have to close stores because they can't keep people from walking out with merchandise because they can't afford to buy it, because it's just sort of the separation is so great, and if the answer is Nike can't sell shoes, or Neiman Marcus can't stay open, we've lost our way.
What Preston captures here is really what we've been calling the land of disconnection and the land of abandonment in our story of the greatest migration. Really, when those with capital and investments are withholding those resources from those in the land of abandonment, those who feel like they don't have the access and the proximity to be able to build the kinds of businesses and enterprises that support their well-being, we have a scenario where there's just this growing gap and disconnect. And I think that dims the future, but the point is that we can build a new future, we can repair. And so I'm very curious to get Preston's take for what the role of local entrepreneurs might be in addressing some of these really big issues.
I don't have an expectation that local entrepreneurs and everyday people are going to solve these dire issues. I think that local people, everyday organizations, local community organizations, entrepreneurs can build communities that they want to live in, that they can create an environment in which people can thrive. They need the support of government. They need the support of foundations. They need the support of funding sources. But the work can happen in community. I do believe that, and that's why I've been doing this work for so long. And if I didn't believe it, I don't know what I would do.
I'm so grateful to Preston that he took the time to sit down with us and share his perspectives on what it will take for all of us to get to the land of flourishing. This is actually what the greatest migration is all about. And Preston, thank you for being such a values-aligned leader who's been investing in communities and in the key priorities that will help us arrive at that future economy so astutely and with such clarity and conviction. I, for one, will be contemplating the idea of proximity and perspective for a long time to come. That's one of my biggest takeaways. I wonder what your biggest takeaway was. Please join us at future.risingtidecapital.org, where hopefully you'll share some future interview question suggestions, because my hope is that we'll bring extraordinary leaders and investors to come and have these kinds of conversations with us for a long time to come. And if you say why, it's because the Future Tide conversation is how we shift our perspectives. It is how we actually achieve proximity through stories. It just doesn't have to be that we're connected to one another because we live in the same neighborhood or are interested in the same things. There are many ways to achieve that sense of proximity, and I believe the interview with Preston shares a lot of how we go about doing that. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you at the next special edition of Future Tide Conversations.
Thank you for tuning in to this special edition of Future Tide Conversations featuring Preston D. Pinkett III. We invite you to listen, share, and leave a review, and learn more about his work at dodgefoundation.org. Future Tide Conversations is a special initiative of Future Tide Partners powered by Rising Tide Capital. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization supporting entrepreneurs and leaders, building initiatives that advance human connection and community well-being. Visit risingtidecapital.org and sign up for new stories and tools at future.risingtidecapital.org. Special thanks to our executive producer, Chris Van Nest, and creative director, Tigist Kelkai, for their work on this Advice Library episode.